Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor Election 2016. It's an election now being framed by terrorism, the ISIS attacks in Paris, and the al-Qaeda-linked attack on a Western hotel in Mali. There are few signs the terror threat is going away anytime soon. Now, the presidential candidates are sounding off on how they would protect Americans from further threats. The two leading Republican candidates, Ben Carson and Donald Trump, have come under fire for their remarks. Here's what Carson said about keeping terrorists from sneaking into America with Syrian refugees.
If there's a rabid dog running around in your neighborhood, you're probably not going to assume something good about that dog, and you're probably going to put your children out of the way. Doesn't mean that you hate all dogs by any stretch of the imagination.
Muslim interest groups like CARE condemned Carson's remarks, and Carson later denied he was comparing Syrians to rabid dogs, saying he was just using a metaphor. Meantime, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump has suggested the United States may have to close down some mosques. He also wouldn't rule out keeping track of Muslims in America.
Should there be a database system that tracks the Muslims here in this country?
There should be a lot of systems beyond database. I mean, we should have a lot of systems. And today you can do it. But right now we have to have a border, we have to have strength, we have to have a wall, and we cannot let what's happening to this country happen.
But that's something your White House would like to implement.
Oh, I would certainly implement that. Absolutely.
What do you think the effect of that would be? How would that work?
It would stop people from coming in illegally. We have to stop people from coming in to our country illegally.
For Muslims specifically, how do you actually get them registered into a database?
It would be just good management. What you have to do is good management procedures.
Trump later posted on Twitter that it was the reporter, not him, who suggested a Muslim database and said he was in favor of strong surveillance and a terror watch list. Nevertheless, Hillary Clinton called Trump's remarks, quote, shocking. Several Republican rivals also denounced Trump's comments, with Ted Cruz saying, quote, I'm not a fan of government registries of American citizens. So how will all this play out on the campaign trail? Joining us now with reaction, Michael Mislansky, a Republican strategist, and from Tampa, Adam Goodman, a GOP communications strategist. Adam, we'll start with you. Will Trump and Carson, will they be hurt by these latest comments, controversies?
I really don't think so. I mean, we've all been shocked by the recent events in Paris. We want answers. We want remedies. I thought Paul Ryan, by the way, was very sharp this past week in saying we've got to push the pause button and get control of this process before we move forward with Syrian refugees. A lot of governors are starting to say we're not ready to accept refugees to our various states. The problem here is, and this is what the election's about right now, Eric, whether we like it or not. There's a lot of insecurity and anxiety that's permeating throughout the American public, and they want answers. They want leaders who are strong, courageous, tell it like it is, stop playing political correctness, and put it on the line. At times, some of that rhetoric might be considered over the line, but when it comes to terrorism, there's a bright line that I think all of us as Americans have got to erase and eliminate, and I think that's where the common purpose and the common ground will be found moving forward.
All right, so Michael, what about, do you think some of the comments, Carson's and Trump's in particular, will be a problem?
Look, I think there's a point at which flame throwing doesn't help you, and flamethrowers flame out. Like, it's one thing to take these issues seriously. They're serious issues. We need to be talking about what's going on with ISIS and terrorism. But this rhetoric, particularly for Trump and Carson, is not going to help them.
So Carson says it was just a metaphor. He was saying using rabid dogs as, bad fundamentalists or Islamists who may be coming over with refugees. Just as a metaphor, you see that as a flame-throwing?
Well, look, the language that you use matters. And he's using language. We know in this environment that we're in, if you use a bad metaphor, you're going to get called to the carpet for it. And I think we're finally starting to see that there's a limit to how much Carson can get away with.
Okay, what about Donald Trump? Donald Trump literally was asked the question by a reporter while he's signing autographs, walking down a line. Is that fair to say that, to pin that comment on him, especially after he walks it back?
Absolutely. I mean, he's running for president at this point. He's got to be willing to take responsibility for the things that he says. And what he needs to prove now to the American people is that he's a serious candidate. And if you're going to react on a whim to a comment like that that's clearly kind of antithetical to many American principles, you better be ready to do it.
So what about it, Adam? I think it sounds like Donald Trump will say things that Americans are thinking, and it doesn't really hurt him, contrary to what Michael's contending here.
You said it perfectly in your question, Eric. It's what they're thinking. A lot of people. And Michael, I think, would agree with this, that we should get to the bottom line of what's really driving a lot of this. We have a president who's acting like Neville Chamberlain did when he thought he could, through appeasement and conversation, back down a guy by the name of Adolf Hitler. We've got an enemy that will not be negotiated with, that will not be silenced and won't be stopped until someone stands up and stops them. And I think that's where Donald Trump and others who are putting it straight on the line. He actually did.
The point is that this language isn't going to help the situation. Right now, we study the language of leadership. What Americans are looking for now is a leader. They're looking for someone who's going to be responsible with their rhetoric. They're going to be positive about solutions. This whole notion of getting into a fight about whether or not we call it radical Islamic terrorism or whether we point fingers at others, we've tested it.
Well, yeah, but you're almost, Michael, you're almost saying that we shouldn't call it radical Islamic terrorism because you don't want to, because you're worried about the language and you know, the PC-ness nature of you putting those terms together, radical and Islam, that people don't want to do it. The left doesn't, Obama doesn't want to do it.
But everyone knows who we're talking about at this point. If every time we spend time fighting about the language,
why don't we just declare war on radical Islam? Why do we? Is political correctness just keeping us from declaring a world war on radical Islam?
Why don't we actually declare war on the people who are attacking us?
They are.
Actually focus
Aren't they the ones who are attacking us? Radical Islamists?
My point is that every time we focus on the language in that case, we're politicizing the situation and taking the focus away from agreeing on the solutions. We have much less of a gap, I think, on many of the policy solutions than we do on this rhetorical debate about radical Islam.
My problem, Adam, is that we're worried about the words. Yeah. We're worried about what we're saying instead of what really matters. There are people who are dying around the world. It's got to the point where there's a scoreboard between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who's going to win, and the numbers that are going up in the scoreboard is how many people they've killed. Why don't we just call it what it is? It's radical, it's Islam, and stop worrying if Donald Trump mentions something in a line or Ben Carson uses a metaphor.
I think the essence of the campaign of 16 so far, and the reason that the outsiders have had such a groundswell of support so far is simply that they say we've seen what happens when you use words and nothing happens. We've seen what happens when nothing happens.
Yeah, but the point is,
we want things to get. Well, wait. We want to get things done. We want leaders who are going to get things done. We're looking at a situation in Paris where once again the president, led by the president, we didn't stand up and lead, which is kind of in our nature and our ethos. We've got to do that again.
We'll give you the last word, Michael.
But the point is that the candidates that perform best under these circumstances are the ones that are focused on the solutions that we need to implement, not on this rhetorical debate about radical Islam.
Got to leave it right there. Adam, Michael, thank you very much.